Welcome to Vetted. Today, we are turning our attention to San Antonio, Texas, Military City, USA, where from June 13th through June 20th, the Department of War's Warrior Games will bring together wounded, ill, and injured service members and veterans from across the military community for one of the most meaningful events in adaptive sports. The Warrior Games began in 2010, but they have become far more than an annual athletic competition. They are a public demonstration of recovery in motion. They are a place where service members and veterans who have experienced life-changing wounds, illnesses, injuries, trauma, and transition are able to compete again, belong again, lead again, and in many cases, rediscover parts of themselves that they may have feared were lost. This year's games are especially significant because they're coming to San Antonio for the first time. The games are free and open to the public, and this year will also include a Riverwalk River Rally, live stream coverage, and expanded ESPN Plus coverage, allowing families, friends, supporters, and communities across the country to witness what these athletes bring to the arena. But to understand the Warrior Games, we have to understand that this is not just about medals. It is about recovery, it is about identity, it is about teamwork, it is about family, and it is about the powerful truth that healing rarely happens alone. For many of these athletes, adaptive sports are part of a much larger recovery journey. These sports are not simply modified versions of traditional competition. They are carefully designed opportunities for wounded, ill, and injured service members and veterans to rebuild strength, confidence, trust, connection, and purpose. They allow competitors to test themselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. They also remind the public that recovery is not passive. Recovery can be fierce, it can be disciplined, it can be joyful, it can be competitive, and it can be deeply communal. And that is what today's conversation is all about. We are joined by three extraordinary guests whose work touches the Warrior Games from three essential directions: the games themselves, the families who walk beside the athletes, and the healing spaces that support the whole person. My first guest is Dave Paschal, director of the Warrior Games. Dave brings to this role an extraordinary depth of military, leadership, and institutional experience. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel and a longtime senior executive service leader. His career includes command of the 1st Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Division, including service during Operation Iraqi Freedom, as well as senior leadership within the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command. His background spans combat leadership, Army training, education, organizational development, and the shaping of large-scale programs that affect service members across the force. That matters because the Warrior Games require far more than event management. They require a leader who understands service, recovery, team identity, military culture, and the systems that surrounded wounded, ill, and injured warriors. Dave has described the games as life-changing, not only for the competitors, but also for their families and friends. Under his leadership, the Warrior Games continue to serve as a national platform for resilience, courage, rehabilitation, and renewed purpose. I'm also deeply honored to welcome Tish Stropes, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at the Fisher House Foundation. For decades, Fisher House has been one of the most trusted names in the military and veteran community, providing comfort homes where military and veteran families can stay at no cost while a loved one receives medical care. That mission is rooted in a simple but profound idea: when someone is healing, family matters. Tish has dedicated her career to that idea. In her role at Fisher House Foundation, she helps lead the foundation's involvement with Warrior Games and the Invictus Games. She also oversees programs such as Hero Miles, which uses donated frequent flyer miles to help family members travel to the bedside of injured or ill service members, and Hotels for Heroes, which helps provide lodging when a Fisher House is not available. She is a 2023 Presidential Leadership Scholar, serves on the board of Boot Campaign, is connected to leadership service at Florida State University, and has spoken internationally about the vital role families play in the recovery of wounded, injured, and ill service members and veterans. Her background also includes work at the White House, the Department of State, and teaching in Department of War schools in Japan as an Air Force spouse. Tish brings a perspective that is absolutely essential to this conversation, the understanding that families are not spectators in recovery. They are part of the recovery team. They carry fear, hope, exhaustion, love, logistics, grief, advocacy, and faith. At events like the Warrior Games, Tisch and Fisher House help ensure that family is not forgotten because the athlete's journey does not happen in isolation. Finally, I'm privileged to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Stephanie Shaver, United States Air Force and founder of the Healing Hut. Dr. Shaver brings a rare and powerful combination of medical expertise, military service, and deep compassion for the unseen burdens carried by service members and their families. Her practice spans family medicine, preventative medicine, aerospace medicine, and sports medicine. That combination is especially meaningful in the military community, where health is never only about one diagnosis or one injury. It is about the whole person: body, mind, mission, family, stress, performance, and recovery. Dr. Shaver is also the founder of the Healing Hut, a wellness-centered space created to offer compassion, relief, and support to families of wounded service members. Her work with the Healing Hut is especially meaningful because it was created not simply as a wellness space, but as a response to loss, and as a reminder that caregivers and families also need care. That mission carries profound meaning within the Warrior Games community, where recovery is never only about the athlete competing. It is also about the spouse, the parent, the child, the caregiver, and the family members walking beside that warrior every day. Dr. Shaver dedicates the Healing Hut to Senior Master Sergeant Holly Caroon, who served for 3 decades in the Air National Guard, including service with the Minnesota and Connecticut Air National Guard and deployments in Afghanistan. She was also a wife, mother, military spouse, caregiver, and beloved member of the Air Force Wounded Warrior community. Before her death in February 2024, Holly and her husband, Jeff Caroon, traveled with the Air Force Wounded Warriors, and Holly remained deeply connected to the adaptive sports and recovery community. Her life reflected service in every direction: service to country, service to family, and service to those navigating injury, illness, recovery, and transition. The Healing Hut honors that larger truth, that people who care for wounded warriors must also be cared for. Dr. Shaver's work reminds us that healing is not only clinical, it is relational, it is communal, it is sometimes found in a quiet room where someone can finally exhale and be reminded that they are not alone. At major adaptive sports events, spaces like the Healing Hut matter because the caregivers, spouses, parents, children, and loved ones who stand beside wounded warriors are also carrying weight. They may not be competing on the field, but they are living the journey every day. So today, we will talk about what the Warrior Games are, why they matter, what San Antonio can expect in 2026, how adaptive sports support recovery, why family involvement is so critical, and how healing continues long after the final medal ceremony. This is Vetted. Let's get into it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me on Vetted, and I'm thrilled that you could. It's hard to believe an entire year has passed since I joined you for my first Warrior Games in Colorado Springs. How are you feeling?
We're excited.
We're ready to go.
All right. I'm joined today by Dave Paschal, who's the director of Warrior Games, Tish Stropes, who is the vice president of strategic planning at Fisher House, and Dr. Stephanie Shaver, founder of the Healing Hut, which is an incredible project that I have been privileged to. She asked me if I could help volunteer there. That's where I worked last summer to volunteer, and I get to go back. So I'm so excited. She will talk all about that in a little bit, but I think we'll jump right in and start talking about the games, what they are, how they're going to work this year, and what's new and exciting, as well as all the behind the scenes things that make it happen. Because once you go, like I did last year, it changes your life. It changes your perspective on what's important, what's not important. Um, and really, I've been wanting to do this for a year. So thank you for coming to share with everyone else as well. Dave, let's get started. I know that the first Warrior Games was in 2010 in Colorado Springs. And it was originally, I believe, something that the Olympic Committee oversaw. And then few years later, the Marine Corps took over and was in Quantico. Is that correct? That's my old stomping grounds. I grew up just a few miles outside of. So I would love to hear what happened after that. And how did the Army get in charge? I mean, I think I know, but
Well, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and, to be joined by both Tish Stropes and Dr. Shaker, two great Americans that have done yeoman's work for our service members. And I'm blessed to be called part of their team. As you said, the Olympic Committee initially stood up the games. They ran it for, I think, 4, maybe 5 years. And at that point, they returned it to then the Department of Defense, which we now refer to as the Department of War. Each of the services ran the games one time. That's when you saw it, obviously, with the Marines at Quantico. Every service, to include SOCOM, who we treat like a service Special Operations Command, who we treat like a service entity, each ran the games one time. But as you would imagine, there's a lot of work that goes in. We started planning for this games as soon as last year's games end. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And there weren't a lot of efficiencies or lessons learned. So in 2000, and I think it was 21, the Secretary of Defense gave the mission to the Army. And at that time, I was the Deputy G357 at the U.S. Army Training at Doctrine Command, and we got involved with the game. So as you highlighted, to me, it's the premier adaptive sporting event for our sick, ill, and injured service members. And I'd highlight, the natures of our cohort has changed. We're not in the stained ground combat where we're seeing the traumatic injuries of lost limbs and arms and eyesight, etc. There's still a need for these games. When you look at vehicle accidents, motorcycle accidents, cancer survivor, Lou Gehrig disease, we see the cohort has changed, but the need for the games remain critical to what the service does to support our sick, ill, and injured service members.
well, let's talk a little bit about that, because I know the mission language describes the competition as a way to enhance recovery and rehabilitation. It supports physical and mental wellness, provide a forum for athletes to demonstrate resilience and camaraderie. So it's a lot of things. It's not just one thing, and it's not just competition. There's a lot that goes into it. And adaptive sports, I came from Paralyzed Veterans of America, where that was what we did. So I understand. But what do you see as success before even medals are awarded? How does that process work for you? What does this do?
I would highlight, I think the competition is the least important thing that we do. It's not about winning the gold medal. But when some of these, when many of the service members are injured, they miss being part of a team. They grew up a squad, a platoon, a company, whatever the case may be. When they get injured, not intentionally, they often get set aside and they miss that camaraderie. So I think the games provide a venue for, as you said, physical and mental recovery. It gives them a goal. It gives them something to get out of bed in the morning. set. But I'd highlight the Warrior Games should not be the be-all end-all. It should be the launch pad to something else. Something else, ideally, it's return to duty. And we've had some great success stories. For example, the Air Force gave us a number just about a month ago. 1,600 service members in return to duty. That's a tremendous, tremendous reward. So they leverage the games to help with their physical and mental recovery. Or the veterans that's not going to return to duty, ideally the games have introduced them to a sport or something that they can continue on with the rest of your life. I kind of liken it to Boy Scouting, right? The Boy Scout exposes you to 50 different mariffages or coin collecting, rifle shooting, archery, whatever the case may be. Most of our athletes are going to do anywhere between 3 to 5 of the individual events. Ideally, they're going to find an event that gets them excited and gets them out of bed, and then we can help them transition, whether to the VA Valor Games or to the state games, and they find the adaptive sport that they love that helps them continue on their recovery journey.
Let's talk about the games. We talked about this before, there are 11 official games, but one, what did you call it?
Well, I'm an exhibition sport.
Okay, exhibition. So why don't you tell us what those are? I'm excited about the exhibition too. So
you're going to test my memory. So
I can help you out.
We have 9 individual sports and 3 team sports. So the team sports that the athletes will participate in being wheelchair rugby, wheelchair basketball, and seated volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, this year we've introduced pickleball as an exhibition sport. That's because it's going to be next year in Birmingham, England. It'll be a sport as part of the Invictus Games. But the other sports that we have will be swimming, seated rowing, powerlifting, track, field, archery, marksmanship.
You mentioned Birmingham and Invictus Games. Talk about that a little bit.
When the service teams put together their athletic team for the Warrior Games, each service team is allowed to bring 40 athletes. Of that, 28 or so will be active duty, must be on active duty service members, and then they're allowed to bring in 12 veterans. And those veterans have to have been retired with the most cases within the last 5 years. And we allow that because they may not have been a point in the time of their recovery journey where they have been able to participate, and we do want to give them the opportunity. Well, from the Warrior Games, this team here will also pull together the U.S. team, which we will bring to the Invictus Games. So this year, we're going to bring 48 athletes to the Invictus Games. And the Invictus Games were born of the Warrior Games. You know, Prince Harry came to Orlando. He had seen the Warrior Games. He has a passion for taking care of service members. And what he did was take the Defense Warrior Games and bring it to the international level. So this year, I think there's 50 some odd countries that will participate in the Invictus Games. They run the Invictus Games in the odd year. So next year, as I highlighted, will be in Birmingham.
But there's no international athletes in San Antonio, which is unusual or unique. Usually there's some representative, right?
Yeah, and that's a cold hard fact of the budget realities that we live in.
Okay.
When we bring in and look, we fight internationally. God forbid we go to conflict. We go together as an international coalition. Why would we not work together to recover in that same manner? Unfortunately, with the cost of budget constraints, we've reduced the length of the games. So the cost to bring in international teams and then the time that gets added to us on the ground to get through all the sporting event has just for this year become an untenable event. I like that 9 of the 11 events will be executed right there in the San Antonio Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center. 3 of the events will be off post, like swimming, cycling,
track and field.
Thank you.
I will add one thing, though, just because we're touching on where these games started, where they have gone, traveled, and where we are headed. You know, in 2013, when Prince Harry came to Colorado Springs, he was still on active duty. He saw what was happening, decided let's go international. But the Warrior Games itself, like Mr. Paschal talks about, return to duty, or what's my new normal? What direction am I heading in? And out of those original games and where we are, we were able to really impact, on a global level. We've gone from an original, small group here in the United States. We've had different years where we have had internationals who have come to learn and understand, but the Warrior Games were never about internationals. It was really a domestic games for the United States. What we were doing during those years was helping those international countries to look at, okay, how do I take this back to my country and propel a Warrior Games of sorts in whatever country that might have been, whether it was Denmark, whether it was Australia, whoever might have been competing. And today, when you really look at this, Jen, and you look 15 years from where Warrior Games actually started, we see over 20 countries who now have some sort of games in their homes, who now are using adaptive sports in their recovery process. So while the Warrior Games itself are really about the United States, that global impact has been amazing to watch and see. And really us encouraging others, do the same thing. Look at the playbook that we're using, what we're doing, what's been created at Invictus Games, and take it home. You don't have to do this for, 10 days, but you can do this for one day. How do we take this and bring it down and do that? So I think it's important to note that, yes, Warrior Games is very much about what we're doing here at home, but we've been able to motivate and inspire others to take that and infuse it in what they're doing in their country. So, like Mr. Paschal said, we are fighting together. We're in different operations, doing different things. Can't bring everybody here to recover, but we can inspire what recovery looks like in other places. So we will remain that leader.
You talk a lot about recovery in real time. So this is a question for all of you. What does that look like to you?
And I'll talk about it from the family perspective. When the Warrior Games first started, there was no family program. Very interesting. At the very first games, it was all competitors. It was more of a concept of, hey, these guys are on TDY. They're here, to play in these sports, and then they're to go home. That's kind of their job. And we noticed there was a couple family members from the Marines in particular. Semper Fi nonprofit did a great job. They actually brought some family members, but there was nothing for families to really be a part of. And we went back to the Paralympic Committee, Charlie Hubner at the time, and said, hey, we want to create a family program. Every athlete needs somebody to cheer them on. Every competitor who is on a recovery journey has a family by their side who is also on their own recovery journey in what does our new normal look like and what are we going to do? And that's where that family program was created from. Initially, we received a lot of pushback. Hey, this isn't necessarily for families. Well, at Fisher House, we believe family is the best medicine. Family is at the forefront of that service member's recovery. And so we said, look, we will bring these families. It won't cost you a penny. You won't have to do anything. All we need is for you to embrace them and say, yes, we want families to be here cheering on their loved ones. And that wasn't really an Olympic model, and it really isn't today. In the Olympics, we're all about how many medals have we won. But in the military, we are about families. We are about allowing our families to be part of that recovery process because they have to continue tomorrow. They're not as worried about the medals. They really, they're about how are we going to stay together as a family. And so that's what we created. So for every competitor, we brought 2 family members. We flew them in, we took care of their lodging, we took care of their meals, and we created a family program hospitality suite that they could call home at the games, where they come to be part of, creating their journey. They come together as one family, they learn from one another, they share experiences. And we don't see it just, for the individual who is competing, but if it's about his family or her family being there as well. And all of them together, those are the VIPs. Those are really the stars of the Warrior Games, because you do not walk in service alone. You do
No,
have
and I think
volunteer.
you actually, this is going to be a question for you and Doc Shaver. This is really an important point. The difference between military and civilian and life and dealing with recovery is the caregivers and the family, you and the way you support someone. What have you learned and what can you explain to the listeners about what it takes to support someone with invisible wounds, such as post-traumatic stress, whether it's traumatic brain injuries, depression, anxiety, and the stuff that goes with competing and dealing with these other injuries? It's a whole different beast. And I think that goes into what we will be talking about. And you can get into that too. Maybe Tish, you start, and because you've got a lot, that's what Fisher House is. And then Steph, you can start with what you're doing with the Healing Hut and how that started.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I mean, this family program that created initially was about removing burdens, taking things off the plate of the family, of the caregiver, so that they could show up, so that they could cheer their loved one on. There's a financial burden. How can I afford to buy a plane ticket? How am I going to pay for lodging? So we took care of those basic needs, right? A place to sleep, meals to eat. How am I going to get there? Transportation to all these sporting events. And then we added a component of providing resiliency activities. We wanted a home for these families, somewhere that they could go during the game. So we created this hospitality suite area where the athletes are also able to come in, spend downtime with their loved one. But one of the things we kept noticing was that just like these athletes, they have their medical teams and their services are taking care of them to make sure they're ready for competition, to make sure after competition that they're getting what they need so they can show up again. But these families, we noticed, hey, some of them weren't they were suffering as well with anxiety, stress, whatever it might have been, pain, because the focus was never about them necessarily. They were always focused on taking care of their loved one. And so Doc Shaver and I had talked about it multiple times as the lead doctor for the Air Force. She was taking care of them, but I would often say, hey, I have a family. I need help with them. And while it wasn't within the scope of what she was doing, she was incredibly kind and generous with her time and making sure to show up and help those families and try and figure out, hey, why don't we do this or this? And recognize, we always talked about, we should create something for families. What are we going to do? And then something happened, and I'll let Doc Shaver take it from there.
First of all, Jen, thanks for inviting us. It's always a great day when I can be in the same room with Dave and Tish. It's just a real privilege. And and it's a privilege to be involved with this mission. It's literally impacted me greater than anything I've done. And I've, just for some background, I've been active duty. I guess I'm in my 13th year, but I was 12 years as a reservist. But the whole time in private practice, I was a human performance physician, primary care. I'm a primary care sports medicine doc. I'm an acupuncturist. I'm a functional medicine doc. So I'm used to working elite sports. And then I was recruited to go active duty, to work special operations. And to your point, there was not a match between what I knew in terms of how do we take care of elite athletes. And I view our military members as tactical athletes. So when I hit active duty, I was immediately confronted with, we're behind. I don't understand military medicine. And so I was in that realm. And the first year I was at active duty, because of my background and experience, I was asked to support an Air Force Wounded Warrior event. And I had no idea what that was. It was a Wounded Warrior project. I had no idea that our active duty, our military had dedicated Wounded Warrior programs, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, SOCOM. So I was like, I'm in, and it literally has been a 9-year journey. My first games were in 2017. And then I set about trying to understand, for me, what the model is recovery. When I first started working with the Air Force teams, It was not about recovery. In fact, it was the typical military medicine model, where, basically when I got in, it was, we're going to pat you on that, give you some ibuprofen and pat you on the head and maybe give you a physical therapy appointment 6 months, 6 weeks down the road. And so I started to really change that model within the Air Force Wounded Warrior system. I started to make it match more of a sports medicine model. I brought in athletic trainers and massage therapists and acupuncturists and started to rewrite the space. And I was just lucky enough to then start to influence the model at higher levels through the Warrior Games and then the Invictus Games, and started to build out this recovery model where I didn't worry so much about sideline, what happened on the sidelines. We had a lot of elite staff for that. It was how we recovered these athletes after. So my focus was in the evening, where I worked with the athletes and brought in things that were kind of new to the space, where we worked with a lot of directed energy therapies, frequency specific microcurrent, acupuncture, all kinds of things to recover our athletes. And so that's where we really started, with trying to shift how we introduced our athletes and family members as they needed, as we could, to recover. And it's been a real evolution over 9 years of what really is that? What should we really be doing? And I really came to understand it was about really getting down to balancing the nervous system and bringing people back into a more calm space. And so that's really been the model for me. And then how this transitioned over to what I'm currently doing. So I was very involved as on the medical side as a medical doctor, team physician for 4 Invictus Games. And then a couple years later, because I was so busy in my active duty job, I basically was like, okay, I need to take a pause. And then to get to Tish's comment, one of our Air Force athletes that he was an Invictus athlete, double amputee, and I worked very closely with his wife during the Germany Invictus Games, and I was just really close to them. And as Tish said, I really always tried to help the families. We didn't have a lot of resources for the families when we were at these international events. It was very stressful on the families. I mean, the games period are very hectic and stressful, as you can imagine. But I did my best to really help the families. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of headache, just big things, pain and stress are just kind of like everybody has it. So after the games and working through regular Air Force Wounded Warrior events, this athlete's wife, who was also a military veteran, caregiver, amazing person, started to really struggle with invisible wounds, to your point, Jen. And we were always taking care of her husband as the competitor, right? And we really didn't take care of her as the caregiver. And she just started to really have a lot of issues. And then it culminated with a really terrible phone call, several years back, where I got the call from my Air Force nurse that this caregiver had taken a gun and taken her life. And that, really got me. I mean, military, post-traumatic stress and suicide and veteran, we all know it's a huge problem, but it's always kind of out there for me. That brought it right up close to me. And I just decided then and there I needed to do something. I knew too much to not do something. So I have had amazing support from Fisher House, working hand in hand with Tish through the family program, and also Warrior Games with Dave. And I called and I said, do you want me to build something for the family program to help with the burden of stress and pain within our family members? And it became a real passion project for me to build what became the Healing Hut. And the whole purpose, was to, this is Dr. Shaver Unleashed. I am going to go pull everything I knew from private practice, being an elite doc with Olympics and all kinds of things I did on the outside. What is it that we need to do, that we can bring in to help somebody re-regulate their nervous system, get them out of pain and stress in this moment so they don't make a bad decision. And that's the entire focus of the Healing Hut, is to bring in gentle, safe, directed energy therapies to, in this moment, meet a family member or their competitor, to meet them and utilize some of the strategies we have, whether it's frequency specific microcurrent or acupuncture or body work or all kind PEMF. We have all kinds of stuff to bring them from an 8 level down to a 2. And that to me is the ultimate recovery. That gets back to your original question. If I can get somebody to come down, get that parasympathetic nervous system to kick in, that's when we can really start to regulate and change lives. And so that's really the model for me. I called a lot of elite people from across the country on the civilian side, said, hey, do you want to come do this with me, build it? And our first Healing Hut was in the Orlando Games a couple years back. And it really executed beyond what I even thought was possible. I knew the demand was there, but it was really overwhelming, the amount of need in this community. And really, I would say in our active duty as well, to deal with stress and discomfort. And so I put my mark in the sand. Okay, we need to do things differently. And this is what is available. And that's what we did. So now we're building our 4th Healing Hut. But I hope I answered your question. It's really me partnering with the games and with Fisher House and all our incredible support. I mean, we have 30 volunteers from all over the country that are elite therapists and elite practitioners that work with elite athletes, NFL, all kinds of things, that are coming and donating their time to offer something different for our families and our competitors, to perhaps glimpse a moment of time where they don't have the same level of pain and stress and can have a different experience. And it's really been profound. I will pause there because I can get very passionate about this. I will say, doing this has really changed me as well. I've been very humbled with what we've been able to do over the past 4 games.
I was just going to say, one of the things, as we talk, it's about Healing Hut and Steph, obviously, just said, amazing things and just really what it is all about. But really, when you boil it all down, taking care of these families, these competitors while they are there, allowing them, finding a way for them to be present, to reduce that anxiety, that stress, that pain. And I think ultimately giving them hope when they head home, that for a long time they haven't found any relief potentially, right? They're not sleeping well, whatever it might be. And they've done some new type of modality, some new treatment that they've been exposed to. And they say, people tell me there's nothing wrong with me, but I know something's going on and I can't figure out. It gives them hope as they move forward.
I know there are tools that are given. I know that there are a lot. I mean, there's so many amazing people there and protocols and things that are offered that haven't been before. It's phenomenal. So I know they go home with things that are wonderful. What is the difference? What can you tell us about, how do you distinguish between exhaustion and dangerous isolation? What is it is there something that families and caregivers are able to see?
You mean in terms of people who show up during the games?
Yes. And family members also who are looking at each other, because as you say, when they show up, they're often so used to taking care of someone else, or in Holly's case, that we don't see that isolation. We don't see that they're actually suffering themselves. Is there something that we can say? Is there something that you can tell listeners? Look, there's a little more you need to be looking out for in your caregivers and your family who are taking care of the athletes and the people that they're, even if they're not the athletes, the veterans at home, they're active duty. What is it that we can be looking for?
Well, I will say several things to this. Let's get back to the wife of the athlete that took her life. There were a lot of signs. In fact, I was told by my former Air Force nurse when I was working some of the Air Force camps that this person had been looking for me the previous camp because she was having issues. I wasn't there, but our current. So how do we match that? But what we were executing at the games was not a match for that seeking. So we have a model that is in this transition where we have a way within our military system and our medical system and our general society of norms where the response to the signals that are a cry for help are just not necessarily able to be met. So I think that's changing. And in the healing hut, it really is a flare out into the universe saying, this is one more light on the grid of what we can do to try and create a response system or a model where those signals and signs are met. And so how do we do that? First of all, when people, we just assume everybody's stressed out and in pain, first of all. I mean, because almost everybody is, especially caregivers, family members taking care of our wounded warrior competitors. It's just their baseline. So we build for that. We expect it. And that's what we're there for, to try and give them a different experience. Now, I would say if people, by the time they get to the games, they have fairly good coping mechanisms. They've got them and their family there, and they're there to support their athlete. They may have invisible wounds, and most do. We basically meet them where they are. If somebody shows up, and usually when they show up, they're excited. They want to see things. And then we meet them there. We bring them in. We relax them. We do all the stuff with whether we have something where we can just do a little quick vagus nerve reset, which really is an instant stress relief for people. And then we kind of roll them through. It's really, the games can unveil things. The games are stressful. It's a lot. We really put a lot on these families. It's a very busy time. And that's when the stress points start to come out. That's the whole purpose of the healing hut, is to help the families get through the games. And if through the stress, and stuff happens, we've had athletes bring their families and one of their parents actually dies. I mean, we've had injuries, we've had all kinds of things. We've had people have post-traumatic stress flashbacks, all that. We have our service medical teams, but we sync with the medical teams because I bring a really experienced team that understands how to deal with more of the more significant signs. We have a very well-vetted operational psychiatrist, Dr. Bob Kaufman, who is one of the best in the world to deal with our military and veterans who are really, really struggling. And what happens is, as these things come up in the games, we meet them there. And it always comes back to, no matter where we identify them on the spectrum, how do we give them a different experience to re-regulate that nervous system? And then we stepwise them to a different experience. And that's really our model. We have a chaplain, and it's a very integrated approach. So somebody can come in, regardless of where they were, whatever their life they left back home could be completely terrible. Once they get to the games, they're usually trying to overcome that. Now, as they come into the hut, some of that may unwind, and we meet them there. And it all comes back to, how do we re-regulate that parasympathetic, sympathetic drive? And they may be in the healing hut for 4 hours going through directed energy and hands-on and acupuncture and integration. And that's really what we do. And by the end of it, we track them. So we get the information on somebody when they come in. We have a survey on scale from 1 to 10, how much stress and pain. We're not really there as medical. We're there as this.
Non-traditional integrative medicine.
We try and just create a respite, a calm spa-like environment. We also have aromatherapy. So people come in and we change their state. So that's what we do. And I've built this to the point where just about any state that somebody comes to us and we can meet. We even sometimes will have the medical team bring people who are really struggling, because people will all of a sudden not sleep. A lot of the competitors sometimes are just not used to the high demand signal and pressure of competing. They'll bring them in, and then we will basically just take, unwind that level of engagement, mind, body, spirit, so we can get them to the place. By the time they leave, they're re-regulated and peaceful. And in terms of your original question, I mean, we're not here to fix people's lives. We can't. But what we have found is that if we can, and this is really what we're after, to give a family member of a competitor a different experience, because most of them have never been met within the military system to a point where they're not just giving pharmaceuticals or a normal medical model. It doesn't get after some of the baseline real post-traumatic stress and chronic pain. Now, we're moving towards that. The VA is trying to really move towards that with integrative pain. I bring a lot of the top integrative pain people into the healing hut. We're trying to bridge and showcase a lot of this. So we may give somebody who's really struggling back home and maybe isolating and feeling alone, when they come in and they're like, oh my gosh, I have actually slept for 2 nights now, which is amazing. That is what we're after. We're getting after that ground substance where we can get people, they can sleep, they can be out of pain. And then they're curious and they're hopeful and they're like, oh my gosh, I never thought I could be pain-free.
One of the things I will say here as well, though, going back on a very simple level, creating a family program and telling families you matter. Yeah. That has been a critical part, right? Everybody's going through caregivers, service members, the veteran, but what the Department of War stepping up saying, we're going to do these warrior games. And it's not just for competitors, it is for families. We see you, we know what you're doing, we see it. And this is how we can now respond by saying, yes, you are at the forefront and you are a priority for us. So being able to create a family program where these caregivers and family members, for the first time, and for many, they are actually seen.
I want families to know they matter. And this is what I say, you know what? I'm going to bring the very best of what I know is out there for the families and the athletes, which is incredible. We're integrating with our medical teams now to really try and create the most ideal environment with traditional physical therapy, our incredible service medical teams, but they're getting really stretched. They're only so many people. So to be able to really synergize all the services to get people through the games from the beginning to the end and come out of these games empowered, inspired. I mean, the whole point, as Dave said, is look, here's the thing. Life is hard and it's all about overcoming adversity. And in fact, we're partnering for the first time with the World Maker Resiliency Institute, which is an incredible organization that we synergize with. The Healing Hut synergizes with them. They are supporting the family program. And, their whole motto is adversity happens. Prepare, adapt, grow. We have to, adversity does not age well. Okay. We need to face it, and we need to face it together. And so what a privilege to be able to, this just shows the vision of Dave and Tish to understand there's a gap in how we can service our families and our athletes to deal with stress and pain. I mean, and I'm just going to say it. I'm a military doctor. We're terrible at it. And so to be able to have the ability on such a wonderful stage like the Warrior Games to showcase some of this is amazing, and bridge this. So once we completely change the experience of an athlete or a family member, our second piece is we're trying to then, to your original question, bridge them in with World Maker Resiliency Institute to, in fact, their exit survey, would you like us to connect with you after the games to try and link you to meaningful ways to continue the things that have completely helped you? And that gets me super pumped, right?
Dave, tell me about what the response in the military community has been. What with all of this, with the families and with the elevated support for things like the Healing Hut and the programming.
Well, it's been really positive. One of the challenges that I was going to make earlier, how do you prove a negative, right? How do we know the effect of this preemptive strike that the family program, that the Healing Hut is having on our service members and their families, right? We can't count the suicide that was prevented, the family that stayed together. But I could tell you, I could go on for hours and share vignettes of stories of athletes and their family members. So this is well appreciated by the Department of War. As a matter of fact, we have the Personnel and Readiness Assistant Secretary of War for Personnel Readiness going to be our opening speaker. Our farewell speaker is going to be the chairman of the SecDef chairman. So we have some huge support across the Department of War for these games. The last thing I'll say is, when we held the Secretary of the Veterans Administration last year in Colorado, he witnessed, he participated in the Healing Hut. And as Dr. Schaefer said, they're trying to figure out how to do the same thing for our veterans in the VA. So I think we are making a positive impact. And the last thing I'll say is, let's not forget the power of human interaction. As we bring these family members and these service members together, they see other families, other service members that are going through these same difficult journeys. And hopefully, and I'm confident that we're creating a network that they can reach out to someone a week, 10 days, a month from now and say, I'm having problems. How do I get help? So that network that we're creating of these service members and families, I don't think can be overstated in the recovery journey and their resilience.
For people in the San Antonio area or anyone who wants to help, how can they do that, Dave?
First, come out and watch the games. Cheer on our athletes. Say hello to our family members.
They're free, right? Completely free.
A majority of events, as I stated, are at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center. They're free of charge. Come in and watch. If you're interested in helping, if you go to the Warrior Games website, we have a volunteer site there. And you could sign up. You want to work with athletes. You want to work with the family program. You want to get involved with sporting. We have over 500 volunteers for 1,120 some odd volunteer opportunities. Many of the volunteers are picking 2 or 3 shifts. Come out, cheer on our athletes, say hello to the family members. On the 13th on the Riverwalk, we're going to have a parade of athletes. They're going to be on the boats doing a tour, so we'll be out on the Riverwalk for 20 minutes. So come out on there and cheer for these service members and families that have done so much in support of this country.
San Antonio is known as Military City, USA, right? Is that correct?
They are. They fancy themselves as Military City, USA. And I think it's because of the number of service members that are there and the support that they provide to the team.
If there is one thing that you wish everyone who's never been to a Warrior Games, that you could have them know, what would that be?
I'm going to highlight what you said earlier. You can't help but come to the games, watch an event, watch these service members, watch these families, and not come away changed for the rest of your life. I am humbled to be associated with the games. It's recalibrated when you think you're having a bad day because we can't get our computer to turn on or our headphones aren't working properly, whatever the case may be, and you watch a triple amputee swim a 50 freestyle with one arm. If that doesn't reset or calibrate what a bad day is, and again, it just highlights the resilient nature of our young folks that join the military and serve this great country of ours.
How about you, Tish?
Hey, and I would, everything Dave has said is spot on, but I will add this. These games, it's not about data and numbers, and it's about more than that. It's about a lived experience. And I think oftentimes you hear somebody say, thank you for your service. This is a time to show up, to cheer on those individuals, to be able to say thank you in numbers, all those people showing up, being a part of this experience, and being able to give thanks in that way, and meet these men and women where they are is an incredible gift. The gift of your time, there is no greater gift. And so I would encourage people to come out and be a part of it. There's no cost. The doors are open, and we would love to pack those stands.
How can they support Fisher House?
Fisher House Foundation, we have 100 Fisher Houses across the country and world. Come and volunteer, come and be a part of it. Your time, your treasure, your talent, however it is, you can make a donation towards the games. You can show up and cheer folks on, or go and volunteer at a Fisher House. There's endless ways.
Fisher House was my first, as a young adult, my first charitable love. So
thank you,
I
Jen.
highly encourage that as well.
And we appreciate your continued support here today.
Always will have it. And Doc Shaver, you and I connected the first time because I just fell in love with you and everything that you stand for and do. I cannot recommend enough. I think everything that you do is, but in closing, what would you have to say? How can we support you? How can anyone support you? Everyone should, but in particular.
Well, first I agree with Tish and Dave. The games are an incredibly special thing where in my entire military career, I've never experienced anything like it. On the able-bodied side, there's something incredibly transformative when people, a lot of these competitors never wanted to do this. A lot of times their family members convinced them to join an adaptive sport program. And it's the first time a lot of them can actually look up and feel like they're part of something again. And for me to witness, I have seen also a triple amputee do incredible things. It's transformative, not only to the families and the competitors. You just have to be there and feel the energy and see it. It transforms all the volunteers and us as well. That's why my Healing Hut team, I have the same team that closes their practice for 2 weeks to come, because it is, a lot of them say it's the most incredible event of the year for them because of what Tish and Dave and the whole community has built for these families. I can't say enough. So, to me, just showing up and being part of the community, and it changes you. It's like, once you're part of the games, it's hard to let it go. It gets under your skin, and to witness the transformation and the inspiration. You just have to be there. So I'd say people just need to support it. I think awareness is big. Just like this podcast, there's a lot of people that have never even heard of the Warrior Games, or they don't even understand that the military has a Wounded Warrior program. They think of all the nonprofits out there. But just awareness and getting communities involved, it always comes back to communities. So, and awareness and having people help us build, as Dave said, and Fisher House already does, continue to take the Warrior Games spirit and build that community beyond the games. That is the thing. We can transform lives during the games, but how do we spread this Warrior Games spirit and truly the Invictus spirit as we move into the international realm for the international games? How do we all come together and continue to move the space? Really, really do something profound. And that to me is the ultimate support in getting that out there. We are right now, through Fisher House and with Mr. Paschal support. He's been transformative of really, really bringing this into all higher levels of awareness. And just, that's what I would say. Just come out, participate.
I appreciate that so much. And that is the last thing I will say is I really, I think that meeting all of you from the Army side, Dave, I'm losing my, because you actually have retired. They've asked you to come back because you're so good at your job, even though you hide from the accolades and you don't accept how wonderful you are. You are beloved by everyone there, and from the Fisher House side and from the Healing Hut side, everyone works so well together. Everyone is a team. I mean, truly, truly a team. I went into Colorado Springs and I felt like I went into a vortex of love and spirit and patriotism, and I didn't know who I was other than this part of a system. And I wasn't the same when I came back. And I thank all of you for that. So I hope everyone listening will either come or consider coming. I think it's Orlando the year after again. And so I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed having all of you as guests. And I think that we will talk, Tish, we talked about possibly an Invictus Games episode maybe, and we'll see. There's more to come, and there's VA games that we'll talk about that are exciting. So thank you for spending
Our
your
last comment, if I might, if you can't come to San Antonio, go to our website. The games are live streamed. You can
live streamed games.
watch it online.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Thank you. And we'll make sure all that's up on the screen. So, all right. Well, thank you all. Have a
Thanks, Jen.
safe trip to San Antonio, and I'll see you there.